तस्मै श्रीगुरवे नमः। श्रीचैतन्यमनोभीष्टं स्थापितं येन भूतले स्वयं रूपः कदा मह्यं ददाति स्वपदान्तिकम्। वन्देऽहं श्रीगुरोः श्रीयुतपदकमलं श्रीगुरून् वैष्णवंश्च श्रीरूपं साग्रजातं सहगणरघुनाथान्वितं तं सजीवं साद्वैतं सावधूतं परिजनसहितं कृष्णचैतन्यदेवं श्रीराधा कृष्णपादान् सहगणललिता श्रीविशाखान्वितांश्च। हे कृष्ण करुणा सिन्धो दीनबन्धो जगत्पते गोपेश गोपिकान्त राधाकान्त नमोऽस्तुते। तप्तकाञ्चन गौराङ्गी राधे वृन्दावनेश्वरी वृषभानुसुते देवी प्रणमामि हरिप्रिये। वंशकल्पतरुभ्यश्च कृपासिन्धुभ्यैव च पतितानां पावनेभ्यो वैष्णवेभ्यो नमो नमः। नमो विष्णुपादाय कृष्णप्रेष्ठाय भूतले श्रीमते भक्तिवेदान्त स्वामिनिति नामिने नमस्ते सारस्वते देवे गौरवाणी प्रचारिणे निर्विशेषशून्यवादि पाश्चात्यदेशतारिणे। जय श्रीकृष्ण चैतन्य प्रभु नित्यानन्द श्री अद्वैत गदाधर श्रीवासादि गौरभक्तवृन्द। हरे कृष्ण 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 हरे 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 राम 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 हरे हरे। नमो महावदन्याय कृष्णप्रेमप्रदायते कृष्णाय कृष्णचैतन्यनाम्ने गौरद्विषे नमः। ॐ नमो भगवते वासुदेवाय। ॐ नमो भगवते वासुदेवाय। ॐ नमो भगवते वासुदेवाय। So welcome you all. We are studying chapter 3 of Śrimad Bhagavad Gītā, and today we are going to start from verse number 30. मयि सर्वाणि कर्माणि सन्न्यास्याध्यात्मचेतसा निराशीर्निर्ममो भूत्वा युध्यस्व विगतज्वरः। मयि, unto me, sarvani, all sorts of karmani, activities, sannyasya, giving up completely, adhyatma, with full knowledge of the self, chetasa, by consciousness, nirashihi, without desire for profit, nirmamaha, without ownership, bhutva, so being, yudhyasva, fight, vigata jvaraha, without being lethargic. Translation. Therefore, O Arjuna, surrendering all your works unto me, with full knowledge of me, without desires for profit, with no claims to proprietorship, and free from lethargy, fight. Okay. So, as we were studying in the previous verses, in our last class, how the gunas interact with the gunas when the object and the senses interact with each other. So Bhagavan here in this verse is concluding and giving instruction to Arjuna also as a conclusion. He says that I am individually giving the words, the word by word meaning. Why Bhagavan is saying this? Sarvani karmani means all the works. Mai sanyasya. Sanyasa means surrendering completely, as we just read. So, Mai sanyasa means surrendering completely unto me. Adhyatma chetasa means by divine consciousness. Nirashihi nirmamaha, remaining desireless and without the feeling of ownership. Yudhyasva vigatajvaraha, fight being free from lethargy. So, Bhagavan is saying that we have to do all our actions by surrendering completely unto His lotus feet, with divine consciousness, remaining desireless and without the thought of ownership, and at the same time fight free from lethargy. It means that we have to be very active in all sense, whatever the action we are performing. There is no place for lethargy. So we see that everybody in this world has a particular type of action according to the Varna and Ashrama. We discussed this again and again. So Varna and Ashrama means quality and position in the society. So these duties should be performed in Adhyatma Chetasa, that is by divine consciousness or in divine consciousness. So actions to be performed with the thought that I don't have any sorts of ownership on this action. The energy is also given by the Lord Himself, by which I am performing. So we have a tendency, we see that always in our life, that we always depend on some sort of superior energy. We all must have noticed this. In the childhood, we would depend on our parents. Then in our schools or colleges or universities, we would depend on our teachers and so on. So, if it is the case that we have to depend on some superior authority, then we must depend on the supreme powerful and the absolute independent one, that is Shiv Bhagavan. Because no other entity in this world is completely independent, with some sort of imperfection definitely is there in everybody, and nobody is absolutely independent other than Bhagavan. As we know, Ishvaraha Paramā Svatantraha. Svatantraha means independent. So we see that even to know Bhagavan completely, we have to depend on him. It is only possible to know him if he reveals himself before us, and there is no other way. So we have to surrender all our actions unto him, and freely have to discharge all our duties with our entire energy. Okay. The next verse we see, the next two verses we will chant together. Verse number 32 and 31 and 32. So we see that after surrendering, there is no consideration, only execution. So with this we will go to the next verse, that is verse 31. Ye me matam idam nityam anutiштhanti manavaah Shraddhavanto na suyanto muchyante tepi karmabhihi. Ye, those who, may, mine, matam, injunctions, idam, these, nityam, as an eternal function, anutiштhanti, execute regularly, manavaha, human beings, Shraddhavantaha, with faith and devotion, Anusuyantaha, without envy, Muchyante, become free, Te, all of them, Api, even, Karmabhihi, from the bondage of the law of fruitive actions. Translation. Those persons who execute their duties according to my injunctions and who follow this teaching faithfully, without envy, being free from the bondage, become free from the bondage of fruitive actions. Verse 32. Ye tvetadabhyasuyanto nanutiштhanti me matam sarvajnana vimudham stan vidhi nashtana chetasaha. Ye, those, tu, however, itat, this, abhyasuyantaha, out of envy, na, do not, anutiштhanti, regularly perform, me, my, matam, injunction, sarvajnana, in all sorts of knowledge, vimudhan, perfectly befooled, tan, they are, vidhi, know it well, nashtan, all ruined, achetasaha, without Krishna consciousness. Translation. But those who, out of envy, disregard these teachings and do not follow them regularly are to be considered bereft of all knowledge, befooled and ruined in their endeavors for perfection. Okay. So we see that there are two kinds of people here in this world based on the manifestation of divinity. And they are godly or divine and demoniac. So we see that here in these two verses, Bhagavan has briefly introduced these two kinds of people, which he will elaborately discuss in chapter 16, entitled Daivasura Sampada Vibhaga Yoga. Then we will come to know in details. So here Bhagavan is saying that the first kind of people in verse 31, Bhagavan says about Me matam idam nityam anutishtanti. Means these injunctions of mine as an eternal function execute regularly. These kind of people. And what all the qualities? Shraddhavantaha, anasuyantaha. Shraddhavantaha and anasuyantaha means with faith and devotion and without envy. Muchyante karmabhihi. Become free from the bondage of the law of fruitive actions. So we see the Vedas are eternal because they have directly come from the breathing air of the Lord. And therefore the Vedic injunctions are also eternal. As the Lord is eternal, so are they. So the followers of such injunctions are liberated from the bondage of the law of karma. Now the second category of people who are described in verse number 32. How are they? They na anutishtanti, do not execute these injunctions regularly. Abhyasoyantaha sarvajnana vimudhan nashtan achetasaha. Abhyasoyantaha means out of envy, they are perfectly bewildered in all sorts of knowledge. Sarvajnana vimudhan and nashtan means all ruined. Because of this lack of faith and envy, they are completely ruined. So we see that a disobedient person, however great he may be in worldly aspects, is ignorant of the truth of existence due to impurities in the mind. And therefore there is no hope for him for perfection in life. So this is the conclusion here Bhagavan is making from these two verses. So we will move on to the next two verses together, 33 and 34. Sadrisham chishtate swasyaha prakritirjnanavanapi prakritim yanti bhutani nigraha kim karishyati. Sadrisham according, chishtate tries, swasyaha by his own, prakritehe modes of nature, jnanavan learned, api although, prakritim nature, yanti undergo, bhutani all living entities, nigrahaha repression, kim what, karishyati can do. Translation. Even a man of knowledge, that is a jnani, acts according to his own nature, for everyone follows the nature he has acquired from the three modes. What can repression accomplish? Text 34. इन्द्रियस्येन्द्रियस्यार्थे रागद्वेषौ व्यवस्थितौ तयोर्न वशमागच्छेत् तौ ह्यस्य परिपन्थिनौ. Indriyasya of the senses, Indriyasya arthe in the sense objects, Raga attachment, Dveshau also detachment, Vyavasthitau put under regulations, Tayoho of them, Na never, Vasham control, Agachet one should come, Tau those, He certainly, Asya his, Paripanthinau stumbling blocks. Translation. There are principles to regulate attachment and aversion pertaining to the senses and their objects. One should not come under the control of such attachment and aversion because they are stumbling blocks on the path of self-realization. So in these two verses, we see in the first, that is 33, it is said that Prakriti is acting according to her modes. How can you do repression? How can you do repression? And 34 says, you should not be under the control of Raga and Dvesha. Raga and Dvesha, attachment and aversion, which are also a result of gunas. So these two statements apparently seem contradictory to each other, but actually not. Why not? Because we see desire, anger, greed, all these emotions or thoughts or feels can pop up in our mind. Similarly, attachment and detachment or aversion can also come in our mind. As we by the time have understood that it is just the interaction of gunas and nothing else, and we should always remember that I am Atma, so the witness, that is Sakshi, and I neither have any karma nor proprietorship. But it is really difficult, very difficult. In the transactional level, always remaining in this particular thought and doing all the activities is very difficult. So, what is the alternative way then? The alternative way is to engage every organ in the service of the Lord. Then automatically we can become freed from the sense of ownership. But we see that the ignorant people are not going to follow any of these two paths. Not they are able to think that I am the Atma and there is no relation with the action and I am not the proprietor. This way he can't think. Neither he can involve all the organs in the service of the Lord. So what is the last option for him? So Bhagavan says that for them it is prescribed to follow the rules and regulations of the scriptures, because it is the only way to regulate the attachment and aversion for an ordinary person. So we see that as long as we have this material body, the necessities of the material bodies will also be there and we cannot ignore them. So in that case, we must follow and act according to the rules and regulations prescribed in the scriptures. For example, we have marriage ties in our societies to regulate male-female relations or attraction, etc. So we see here in these two verses, the conclusion is knowledge is not enough. Repression is no solution. So follow the regulated, prescribed duties. This is the conclusion. Now the next verse says, it is also a conclusion, what Bhagavan was saying in last 4 verses. Here Bhagavan says in verse 35, Shreyan Svadharmo Vigunaha Paradharma Svanushthitat Svadharme Nidhanam Shreyaha Paradharmo Bhayavahaha. Shreyan, far better. Svadharmaha, one's prescribed duties. Vigunaha, even faulty. Paradharmat, than duties mentioned for others. Svanushthitat, perfectly done. Svadharme, in one's prescribed duties. Nidhanam, destruction. Shreyaha, better. Paradharmaha, duties prescribed for others. Bhaya avahaha, dangerous. Translation. It is far better to discharge one's prescribed duties, even though faultily, than another's duties perfectly. Distraction in the course of performing one's own duty is better than engaging in another's duties. For to follow another's path is dangerous. This is a very, very important verse, as Bhagavan is giving a very important conclusion here. Swadharma means one's prescribed duties, and Vigunaha means with faults. So as we just said, as long as we have this material body, we have to perform the duties related to this. And it is a process of purification of our heart gradually. Now we see that a Brahmana with Sattva Guna is non-violent by nature. Ahimsa is his natural quality. But a Kshatriya who is in Rajas, that is in the mode of passion, he is allowed to be violent under special circumstances. So if one tries to follow the duties of another, abandoning his natural qualities and tendencies, then he will surely be in trouble and can never achieve success, either in material life or in spiritual life. So we see how important it is to act according to our prescribed duties, according to our nature. And we see that is Svadharma and Paradharma. We can see a deeper meaning of Paradharma also. We see here Para, another meaning of Para can be enemy. Enemy. What enemy? That enemy is our mind. We see the mind, its job, the job of this mind is to distract and mislead us for the sake of temporary material pleasures. And running after sense gratification, forgetting the Lord, is truly bhayavaha. that is dangerous. So Bhagavan here is also reminding us in a very subtle way about our Svadharma. Svadharma could also mean Atma Dharma or Sanatana Dharma, or the actual Dharma of the Sanatana Atma that we truly are. So this is the deeper meaning also. And the conclusion is in that way that we must continue our sadhana of nishkama karma, that is without any desire for the fruits of actions, or the service in devotional mode, without any self-interest and ownership throughout our life. Why? Because our goal is self-realization and Bhagavad Prapti, that is attainment of love of God, going back to Godhead. So this is the perfect means to attain this goal. So very, very important verse it is, and we must try to remember also this particular shloka. I will give you a list of shlokas that we can try to remember, and we can recite them regularly. I will give the list also. Okay, so with this, we will now end our session. वञ्चकल्पतरुभ्यश्च कृपासिन्धुभ्य एव च पतितानां पावनेभ्यो वैष्णवेभ्यो नमो नमः। हरे कृष्ण 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 हरे हरे, हरे राम